Hello, my name's host Eric, and this is the last of 8 video series on decision-making processes, type comparison extravaganza hootenanny party that we've been engaged in here. And who left this metal pole sticking out of my desk? Anyway, let's talk about the last two personality types, the ENTP and ENTJ personality types. I've been asked a couple of times now, why did you pick these pairings? Why did you order them the way that you did? Well, I picked these two for the obvious reasons. I could come up with lots of other reasons why I picked these two, but that would be a pointless waste of a pointless waste of energy, I'm sure. So, yeah, I picked them because I pulled an Eric, as they say. And I have people in my life who will use that expression. What it means is something's on fire, and Eric's saying, guys, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a problem. It just means that one of his experiments got a little bit more oomph to it than he anticipated, right? And it's not like he was experimenting to try to accomplish anything anyway. ENTPs are scientists who enter the scientific method without any hypotheses and without any way to test their results to see if they're accurate. ENTP decision making, as I said in an earlier video, is like being the sweeper for a curling team. You are adjusting the thing you've already done to reframe it to make it into what you want it to be. The problem with an ENTP is that the SE shit happens unconsciously. Oops, another action was taken there. The action that is conscious is metaphysical in nature. So when I take metaphysical action, I know what I'm doing. When I ask a question, well, okay, you said this, but if that's the case, then would this also be true? Would you agree? That's a very conscious, decision-driven question I'm asking, where I know what I'm going to do with it. I mean, I don't always know exactly what I'm going to do with it, but I know the process I'm going to engage in once I do it. I understand that NE process really well. Pick apart, find something to set your teeth into, shake it till it dies. That's the NE process. It's important for me as an ENTP that I have SE in the 8th slot. And it's a handicap that a lot of younger ENTPs have, that they haven't quite figured out how to convert their boundless energy and enthusiasm into lasting work product. Into murder? No. Metaphysical killing of rodents is not murder, okay? Killing a metaphysical rodent. See, I was referring to what my dog did. My dog actually murdered my actual guinea pig. But I'm saying this is what NE does. You see, it grabs the metaphysical guinea pig and it shakes it until all the metaphysical guts come out. And then they land in different piles, and you go, see? And everyone goes, oh, yes, now I see. No, I don't see. One of the problems the NE Dom has is that we actually, the ENTP specifically, this is a good reason why I didn't pair it with the ENFP, even though that may not be the reason why. They're not the same at all, because the ENTP takes metaphysical action that needs to find a bridge between the metaphysical action and the concrete world, so that the TI can because look, we don't have anything that puts it out there naturally in its own state. The ENTP, without something kicking in and happening, is going to flail around, starting a bunch of projects, never accomplishing anything that actually is of any utility to anybody, until they figure out a bridge between their ability to SE begin shit, launch stuff in the physical world, and their any inability to finish shit. And that's the core growth thing the ENTP needs to accomplish. So an outsider might look at ENTPs and say, what you need to do is develop restraint, mindfulness, a sense of stop, think. I said it to myself. In my first video that was ever successful, that people actually liked and watched it, and they gave me positive feedback, and it would just make me cry every time I saw it, because I had no idea how desperately thirsty I was for that shit, right? For a little bit of a forum in which I could be myself and not be hated for it. Because the ENTP, going about their friends and family are not a large enough world to contain an ENTP. The ENTP cannot possibly get his needs met in that context. Decision making is not conducive to coordinating well with those groups of people either, because our decision making is impulsive. We have terrible follow through. We have a tendency to make promises, believing 100% that we're going to follow through on them, and just never do anything, or doing something and then not doing something for a while and then doing something again, and being like, "See, I told you." There's this other thing that happens with the ENTPs. ENTPs will be engaged in a process and they'll remove themselves from the process for a while. But that's what it appears. Everybody else thinks they've removed themselves from this process on some level or another. Whatever level you're looking at it at, they think, oh, you removed myself from my level of this process. That's not what actually happened. It's just still going down in the background that others don't see. That's influencing the state of fallowness. ENTP is wise to pull back and not act when they feel hesitant. When I'm having trouble making a decision, that means I'm trying to take action where it's not wise for me to take action yet, because all the pieces aren't in place yet. For me, I interpret my any driven decision-making process as being fundamentally one of embracing magical thinking, accepting that the world has set things up for you in a specific way, and you're supposed to play these cards in a certain way. And if you try to force it or play it the wrong way, then you cause problems with the universe. The universe gets mad at you. It does shit. Fuck shit up, you know? If you play it right, if you deduce from the universe what it wants you to do, and you don't question the magic of it, and you display a constitutional acknowledgement that all of my rational justifications fail before the spectacularly unparsable magic that is consciousness, ultimately. That it doesn't matter how many abstract explanations I have, I need to trust my intuition. Extrovert intuition has a bad habit of not trusting itself. That's something that has to be learned. Don't trust your thinking, trust your intuition. ENTP has a hard time learning that. Most types, including the ENTP, default to thinking that their dominant function is their second function until they learn about this shit. They think, oh, I'm a thinker. I'm a TI person. I'm definitely a thinker. ENTPs would say that. The only type that doesn't do that is INTP. They go, no, I'm TI first, then E. Well, okay, great. Well, that's because you're TI, so you're, you know. But if people who act more quickly before they really think it out, they're going to conclude their second function is their dominant function because it's the function they use the most. So obviously I use thinking all the time. Well, what I'm doing right now, I'm parsing these issues and providing an analysis about this stuff. I'm using thinking to communicate to you ideas. The ideas themselves, where they come from, whether or not they're good ideas, and how to maximize their resonance with some shared truth and all that kind of stuff, that is it seems like they're clearly linked to each other in the ENTP's head. But I am acting on truths that I know about the future that I can't possibly justify. I can't possibly intellectually convince anybody and say, you should believe me when I predict this is going to happen, because ultimately the reason I've had to accept the reason and that I actually believe that is because I intuit it, not because my logic is correct, which is what I used to think it was. I used to think, well, the reason my prediction is more accurate is because I'm smart and I'm using logic to conclude what one ought logically conclude about the future. Now I think, I'm not even sure if my predictions are better. I could be just engaged in a process of hit bias, as they say, or whatever it's called, confirmation bias. But I do believe that when I've got a sense that something is going to prove a channel of opportunity rather than a channel of futility, and there's disagreement about it, I think I'm probably right. And when it comes to making decisions about it, I don't make decisions. They just happen. I don't know. I do scramble and adjust, and I make tactical decisions. I don't make strategic decisions. I'm exclusively tactical. The ENTP's ability to change things on the fly and adjust on the fly and stuff is the weak point in that lies in the fact that they get lost in the battle they're in. If you can trap them in the battle they're in while actually wanting to battle them on a battle that's in a different framework, and you're going to utilize what they say in this one, that's how you can trap ENTPs. Most of them. I don't think you can trap me like that, though. Anyway, just because I thought about it so goddamn much, and I'd like to think I've got defenses. I want to be surprised. I want somebody to come at me with some attacks that could surprise me. Would be great. Anyway, that's ENTP decision making. What is it? If you had to stand in this whirlwind and you aren't in any dom, you'd feel very sorry for me, I bet. I think this is true of any DOMs and SE DOMs, probably. I don't know about SE DOMs, but any DOMs I feel that way. You feel sorry for me. Because, look, I can't even complete the sentence without sidetracking into, well, actually, it could be for this, or that and that. Or, actually, you know what? It could be... that's a fucking handicap is what that is. And we have to learn to push through it and complete ideas and be functional in our expressiveness in ways that don't bog everybody down in a bunch of unnecessary details. As I have already probably bogged you down a few unnecessary details about the ENTP, but it is, I'll give you a little secret, it's my favorite type. Now let's talk about the ENTJ personality type. I'm not even gonna open the ENTP open for commentary. I will wait till the end when you guys can comment on both. So ENTJ. I know an ENTJ, Crandall. I have had some metaphysical excitement today with ENTJ Chad Crandall. I saw him on a video displaying somebody who's got highly developed functions that aren't supposed to be strengths. I mean, I guess FE would be. See, that's the thing. FE is like is like SE for me. So for the ENTJ, they're looking at a cognitive function set that goes TE in the dominant slot, followed by NI, followed by SE, followed by FI. So ENTJ is the luckiest type you can be, for sure. If you want to make decisions, if you want to win, if you want to have a clear understanding of your own purpose, if you want to attain the outcomes you desire, if you want to be rich, they're the highest paid type. So decision making for the ENTJ is no problem. They lead with extrovert thinking. That's a judgment function that gives them a great understanding of the natural mechanical interactions of various components of a system in the world, provided it's a physical system or provided it shares core traits with the physical system. So something like YouTube is going to be understood in the same way that a physical system is understood by an ENTJ, whereas an ENTP is going to understand YouTube as a metaphysical system first and foremost, and an ENTP may need to come to understand how to incorporate an ENTJ style vision of YouTube as a physical system if that ENTP is to maximize outcomes for himself. One of the hugest differences between the ENTP and the ENTJ is the ENTP has to fight hard before they accept that actual outcomes matter. We do have to accept that, and we do have to fight hard to get there, because when we're younger, we have a tendency to think, well, we learn a lot of narratives, right? ENTPs do. We learn the narratives about how you're supposed to help people and all this other stuff or whatever. Really, we're not sure why or if we want to do something if it's not playing around. Playing around, we understand. ENTJs have the opposite problem. They don't understand playing around, but what they do understand is the value that I am starting to learn, and hopefully will continue to learn, the value of killing multiple birds with one stone. So they are going to coordinate things such that their time has utility, and because they're TE and they understand systems, they see how those systems fit together, and they're going to execute a series of behaviors to attain those ends that are going to be highly effective. Why do we know this for sure? Because their aspirational thing is pulling the trigger on shit. So just what am I doing? I'm spending almost all my time at this point. I'm using my tools of TI and NE, but the thing that I'm actually working on is my FE. I'm refining it. And the thing that actually drives the engine of my ability to retain any viewership at all is my ability to at least reach competent levels of, to at least reach a comfortable level of competence such that viewers don't feel as though they're in dangerous hands when they watch one of my episodes. In other words, Eric may do something really awkward or embarrassing or cringy right now. I don't like that channel because occasionally it subjects me to really awkward, cringy moments. That's a reason why I might say I don't want to watch that channel anymore. I recognize that. So the FE thing is something that I have to wrestle with. The FE thing is not something that the ENTJ has to wrestle with. What they have in that same situation is SE. And just as it manifests here in this context as me being highly FE attentive, it manifests to the ENTJ as doing all kinds of shit. And they do stuff all the time. They're ends driven with TE first. They're whole ends driven rather than disruptive ends driven. They're completion ends driven. They want to add a new venture that's complete, unique enough, distinct in and of itself, well defined, clearly understood by everybody, and they're willing to do all the steps and according to a logical order of operations to attain that goal. The ENTJ is going to be successful. The issue is, if you're trying to be successful at something like YouTube, well, then there's the FE problem that the ENTP has as well. For the ENTJ, they have FI in the fourth slot. They aren't necessarily comfortable with their own feelings, but as with the ENTP is sort of, it's there to rely on. You have to attend to it or else you're busted. Another way of thinking about it is occasionally it comes through and you're fucking so glad you have that thing because you needed that one moment of SI to come through. Well, same thing with them with FI probably. At the end of the day, they have got such a great stack because after they've done all the first they come up with a logical plan of sorts. Then they check it for intuitive truth, make sure it's a whole truth. Then they began executing it, working on it. And then lastly, they see, and it's making me feel good or bad again? I forget. Oh yeah, it is making me feel good. And they know, because it's conscious, they know they're not good at it, but they don't value it very highly. And ultimately, if you're going to have one in the fourth slot, might as well be that one. It doesn't really do you a lot of harm. And they say that ENTJs experience their emotions about once a month in a big rush, like a menstrual period. I think ENTPs have similar things, except they come more frequently and they're more intermittent and stuff like that. So at the end of the day, the decision-making process of the ENTJ is enviable if your goal is to make as many decisions as possible and get as much shit done as possible and attain as high an achievement level as possible. To the extent that an ENTP and an ENTJ were to compete directly against one another, and most things in life don't require any such thing. In fact, in a lot of endeavors, something that might appear competitive at first may have only mutually beneficial impacts, provided nobody gets their feelings hurt or something. Now, I have not watched any of Chad's stuff, but I've heard a couple comments so far from people here about what it was like, and they said he thought it was funny or whatever. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I plan to at some point. But I will say this. The trick as a debate coach, I like to think about the types in general as debaters paired against one another. And ENTJ and ENTP is a matchup that ENTJ will win most of the time. The reason is because ENTP doesn't have the same kind of stick-to-itiveness as ENTJ, nor do they have the reliability of the ENTJ's proven TE. I mean, not necessarily proven, but binary, works or doesn't kind of TE approach combined with the SC, like I indicated. It gives them a big advantage over any type if you're measuring on any metric that involves achievement in anything. But there's one type that is matched up well against the ENTJ, despite their flakiness and all those other things that we're guilty of, is the ENTP. And the reason is ENTPs don't conform to TE rules. We're not subject to predictability in the way that the outside world is, the physical world. And we're not subject to predictability in the way that our types are subject to predictability. And the reason is because that would, for us to be able to be predictable, would mean that we'd have to behave in ways that we could anticipate ourselves. And I don't know how I'm going to behave in any given day. When I'm able to compel myself to attend to the issue of thinking about such things for a stretch of time, I end up doing something like this, making a full day's videos worth of analysis regarding decision making and such. And I make the reality be what I want it to be, to the best of my ability, which requires me to make it manifest in the external world. For you, it's the opposite, the ENTJ. They're going to be succeeding in the external world, but when we're dealing with something like this, it's not the physical world. YouTube's a hybrid-y kind of a thing where it's neither the physical world nor is it an entirely unconstrained metaphysical world where anything goes. It's not all pure conditionality, but the identity constructing nature of what we're doing here is such that it's hard to conceive of an algorithm or a protocol or a TE approach or a whole truth approach being able to successfully understand a system as diverse and complex as the world and the internet and YouTube. So in that regard, I'm curious to see how it plays out. I don't know what the answer will be. For me, if I'm not just playing trolley guy or whatever, I am interested in seeing how my metric works. Like, to me, that channel is a metric for my own success. How are they doing? Am I doing substantially worse than them? Are we doing better than them? Blah, blah, blah. How, and what we have are two conflicting plans that are starkly contrasted against each other in some sense. They're attentive to making sure each piece of media is professional and set up for ease of consumption and ease of location. Talking with famous people, is not that yet. But I'd like to see it. I always like to. If I can't beat someone, win them. If I can't beat someone, join them on each argument individually, never on a whole. Because we don't do whole truths. We find the little chunk of your truth that's useful for us and stick it onto the other thing. So that's all I have to say about it. I'm interested in any commentary anybody has, and I'll just listen. I got nothing else to say about ENTPs and ENTJs except I like ENTJs. I like Chad Crandall. I like talking to Trey Pierce. I think they're knowledgeable, and I respect what they're doing. We have the weirdest relationship. Also, he never looks me in the eye. Well, INFP listener, it's because you never turn your camera on. How am I supposed to look you in the eye? Oh, wait, you're not talking about me? Okay. Let's see. Blow it all up. Excellent advice. Excellent advice. That's any advice. But look, Mr. Haberdasher, remember, Uranus in the 4th slot. Don't get too reckless trying to blow shit up yourself. Just like I shouldn't be setting any 4 wheels around here, okay? Okay, other thoughts? Anybody's thoughts? Aw, man. Her dad. My dad is an ENTJ. Oh, well, was it fun growing up with an ENTJ father? Or not so much fun? I believe my father was an ESTJ. Regardless, any other comments on this? Okay, thank you so much for being here and watching this show here, people who are watching it on the internet. If you are sitting here in the room, thank you very much for being here. And this concludes the 8-video series of type comparisons on decision-making processes. The end.